Hey guys, welcome back to Reignited. Now, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, my name is Sky and we do primarily Hemi-based projects on this channel. Now, if you haven't heard of Tavarish before, I'll be very surprised at that because he's one of the more prominent automotive YouTubers out there. He has just over 2 million subscribers and he's currently one of the hosts of the YouTube show Car Trek. Now, if you haven't seen that before, I highly suggest you go watch that. When it first came out, it was basically a straight copy of Top Gear, and I don't know, it was a little stilted. But I think as the seasons have gone on, they've really had a chance to make it their own, add their own unique touches there, and now it's a really quite enjoyable show. So the point of this video is that he has called out all automotive YouTubers. He just posted a video just a couple of days ago, I'll link that down below, where basically he said, hey, I'm calling out automotive YouTubers because their build level isn't up to the standard that we think it should be. Like, we should all be trying to improve. And I agree with that. We are all trying to improve the quality of our builds and what we're doing here. And so what he did was he came up with a 100-point system to rate your build that you've done and see where it falls on that scale. So I've decided to do that with my particular build right here. If you haven't seen this truck before, it's called Identity Crisis. And the reason for that is because it's a 1986 Chevy C10 that I have swapped a 392 Hemi into. Now, I will say I do find it a little bit rich that he in particular is the one calling out other YouTubers for their build quality, because it seems to me in a lot of cases that he's farming out the work that he's doing to other employees or to professionals, and then when it comes back he says, look how great of a job that was done on this project vehicle, when in fact he wasn't the one who did a lot of that work. So I don't know, I find that a little bit funny, but that's okay, that's not a problem, we move on. So as I mentioned, we are talking about my 1986 Chevy C10. Now, I originally put this truck together for Rocky Mountain Race Week last year. That's right. I did Rocky Mountain Race Week 1.0, had an absolute ball, did a bunch of videos on it, and pretty much nobody watched those videos at all. If you're interested, I've got the playlist right here. You can check it out, but literally there's like 700 views on each of those videos. Fairly disappointing, no question about it. But if you want to watch the entire build of this truck, I also have that in a separate playlist. You can look at that right here. So let's take a further look at this truck. So the point scoring system that Tavarish has devised is out of 100 points total. It's broken down into a number of different categories. Now, the first category here, worth 5 points, is legality. Is the car registered and insured? Is it legal to drive? I am very proud to say that it is in fact registered and insured and absolutely legal to drive. Now, that's not always the case with some of my projects, but this one is, as of course it has to be for Rocky Mountain Race Week. So we're starting this off with a bang. We get the full 5 points. Now, this next category is one where we're gonna take some hits. It's the paint and body category. It's 25 points total, 5 per subcategory. So the first one, bodywork quality. Is the bodywork free of any pinholes, waviness, and scratches? Are the panel gaps to factory spec or better? Gotta be honest, guys, bodywork is not my thing. I don't care about it that much. Panel gaps, you know, I mean, the door's still open and closed. That's about as good as it gets for me. I'm giving myself a solid 2 out of 5 on this one. An argument can be made for 1, but I'm gonna be generous and give myself a 2. All right, next up is metalwork quality. Were factory methods used to attach the metal? Is the car's unibody or frame safe? Yes, in this case, I feel like it very much is. You know, this was a pretty much stock truck that I did a lot of different modifications to actually get the engine mounted in there, but I also did some upgrades to it as well. I did a flip kit in the back there, so the frame is all reinforced there. I built a set of Caltrax bars from scratch. I guess you shouldn't really call them Caltrax bars. Those are just traction bars, and I built those from scratch, and that really stiffened things up, keep the wheel hop from happening. So I feel like the truck as a whole is stronger than it originally was from the factory. So I'm giving myself a decent score on that one. I'm giving myself 4 out of 5. Moving on to paint quality. Is the paint free of noticeable dirt nibs, uneven color, fish eyes, excessive orange peel, flaking, bubbling, or dry spots? I don't know about you guys, but I can pretty much see myself in this fender right now. I mean, look at that reflection, that shine. All right, it's just primer. I just sprayed this thing real quick to make it all one color. She's not pretty. I just pressure washed it, and you can see all the pressure washer sprayer marks on it. That probably wasn't the greatest decision, but that's okay. I'm giving myself a 1 out of 5 on this one, and I think that might be a little bit generous. All right, materials used. Were the materials used correct for the application? Panel bond, primer, sealer, filler, fiberglass, carbon fiber, metal. I'm giving myself a 4 out of 5 on this one because I definitely felt like I used the right kind of products. This is the automotive grade primer. I actually sprayed it with a gun. It didn't come out of a rattle can. And I didn't do any sort of, well, I think there is some real light filler work on this panel here, but I didn't actually do that work myself. So I think it's okay. It's not bad. I definitely used the correct materials for the job. So I'm giving myself that 4 out of 5. Now the finish work. Were factory methods used to finish the body and paint? Color sanding, paint off-gassing, panel interior completeness. I'm giving myself a solid goose egg on this one. What are you gonna do? You know, the truck looks like what it looks like. It's a primer truck, but you know, you can kind of see where some of the stuff's already starting to come through the primer a little bit, but what are you gonna do? Not really a concern of mine. I'm okay with a big 0 on that one. All right, now we're moving into more my area here, which is the mechanical section. General operation. This is also worth 25 points, 5 points per subcategory. Now, general operation. Does the engine run, idle, rev cleanly? Does the transmission go into gear reliably and smoothly? Are all temperatures and pressures stable when running? Absolutely yes to all of those things. The truck actually drives really well. The engine is running off of a Holley Terminator X Max setup. I love that thing. It works absolutely amazing. So this thing runs perfect. I'm giving myself a 4 here instead of a 5 because the transmission countershaft bearings, you can hear a little bit of a whine coming from them. I'm gonna have to take that apart at some point and change those bearings out. But other than that, mechanically, this thing's very solid, drives very nicely. All right, visual inspection. Are the mechanical components free of fluid leaks? Are all the hoses, belts, gaskets, seals, bushings, tires, and brakes in good condition? Once again, I'm giving myself a 4 out of 5 here because pretty much everything is new mechanically here. The engine has been completely gone through and refreshed, has new tires, new brakes, all of that. Everything's in really good condition. Now, the reason I'm knocking off a point here is because on my radiator, which is also new, it has actually a fill plug here on the front, which unfortunately has a very small leak in it that I'm going to have to solve that leak. So that's why I'm giving myself a 4 out of 5 because there is a couple of drips of coolant on the ground whenever you move the truck. Abnormal noises. Are there any unintended noises or vibrations caused by the running of the powertrain? I'm giving myself a 3 out of 5 here because absolutely, this truck does have its rough edges. It's got some definite vibrations. It's got an exhaust drone at about 2,000 RPM. You got, as long as you stay away from right at 2,000 RPM, you're in pretty good shape. That drone noise will kind of go away. But if you're at 2,000, whew, it's pretty strong. Components torqued to spec. Are all critical components torqued to spec? Engine internals, subframe, mounts, wheels, brakes, suspension. I gave myself a 4 out of 5 because normally, even though I'm very meticulous about all my torque specs on here, I might have missed something because I was absolutely thrashing to get this truck done for Rocky Mountain Race Week. In fact, I had exactly 20 minutes to drive this thing before I said, hey, let's put it on the trailer and go. It seems like it works just fine. So that's what we did. So I might have missed something along the way, but again, I'm usually pretty particular about torquing all my stuff. Last subcategory here is completeness. Are all components where they need to be? Is everything secured? Again, I gave myself a 4 out of 5. I think we're in pretty good shape here. Most everything is secured very well. I honestly can't think of anything offhand that's not secured, but I figure there might be, so I went ahead and knocked off a point for that. Now our next category is drivability. It's another 25 points, worth 5 points for each subcategory. Diagnostics. Is the gauge cluster free of any warning lights? Are all temperatures and pressures stable while driving? I gave myself a 5 out of 5 on this one because, well, with a Holley Terminator dash, I only have the gauges on there that I actually want, so I don't have any warning lights. Everything works perfectly. This thing drives great, and it has a manual transmission in it, so I don't have to worry about that. Honestly, I love this thing. It works. All right, once again, abnormal noises or vibrations. Is the car free of any unintended noises caused by driving? Squeaks, rattles, pops, bangs. I gave myself a 2 out of 5. The interior in this thing, I actually love the interior very much. I think it's very nice, but I also left it unfinished. There's no headliner, there's no A-pillar trim panels. There's no trim panels, period, in the inside of this truck. So it's got that tinny kind of loud noise to it. So definitely when you're driving this thing around, it's kind of an assault on the senses. So I gave myself a 2 out of 5. Performance. Is the performance of the car at an OEM level or better for the given platform? Now, this one is definitely subjective. I gave myself a 2 out of 5 on this thing because again, it's a little rough riding. It's very low. You have to watch out when you go into driveways and things like that. And it definitely doesn't have the supple ride quality that the factory had before. But when you're putting out probably close to 3 times the original horsepower of what this truck came with, and it's completely changed the dynamic of the vehicle. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for in the vehicle when you're driving it. It definitely does not have that comfort quality anymore that OEM had. But let me tell you, this thing is an absolute riot to drive. I did change out the rear gears to 373 gears and I put a limited slip rear end. This thing is constantly spinning the tires and it is absolutely a blast. Next category, alignment. Is the suspension aligned accurately? I gave myself a 4 out of 5 because I did actually align this vehicle and it's pretty darn good. My steering wheel is just slightly off center, so that's why I'm knocking off a point there. Last category here is 1,000-mile drive. Can the car drive 1,000 miles or more without any warning lights, mechanical faults, or electrical issues? Again, I gave myself a 5 out of 5 here because I did take it on the entire Rocky Mountain Race Week event and it performed flawlessly the entire time. 1,250 miles on that event. We raced at 4 different racetracks, one of them twice, so 5 different times on the racetrack, and this thing performed flawlessly. Now, I did have a couple of very minor issues. One, that my starter motor decided to explode and I had to reassemble that to put that back together again. And my headlight wiring might be a little bit suspect because it was flickering going over hard bumps, but mechanically this thing drove the entire time with no issues. And I'm talking triple-digit heat. Every single day of the event, it was over 100 degrees, and this thing made it just fine and was abused at the racetrack as well. So I cannot say enough about how well this truck has performed. That's why I'm giving it a full 5 out of 5. Now, the very last category listed here is purpose, worth 20 points. Does the car fulfill the purpose of the project? Whether it's a 10-second drag car, daily driver, drift car, whatever it is, I am absolutely giving myself the full 20 points on this one. This truck does exactly what I expected it to. It's actually even more fun to drive than I anticipated it to be. It's one of my favorite vehicles I've ever had. I'm not going to be getting rid of it anytime soon. I still need to do some various upgrades to it to improve it. I really want to do a 4-link setup in the back, get some slicks on this thing and really see what it can do before I start even improving the motor that much more. Now, this 6.4 liter Hemi has got a lot of room for upgrades, but that's coming down the line and I just can't wait to see what this thing can do. I would love to at some point get this thing to be about a low 11-second vehicle. But on my final day of Rocky Mountain Race Week, with the street tires on here and me, the novice at drag racing behind the wheel, I did manage to run a 1297 with it, which I thought was very respectable for a brand spanking new build. So putting all of that point scoring together, what does that give me? I get 73 out of 100, which sounds about right for this truck. It has a lot of room for improvement to actually make it that 100% that it could be. But honestly, I love it where it's at. I don't want to go that 100%. I don't want this thing to be something that I'm afraid to go out and beat on the thing because I'm like, it's too nice. I have too much money into it. That's not the point. The entire point is to drive this thing, thrash this thing. Even the engine, if the engine blows up, I'm not really that concerned about it. Hemis are what I do, so I'll just build another one. It's not that big of a deal. So it's really freeing to have that capability to just go out and say, you know what, I'm just gonna slam on this thing as hard as I can, see what happens, why not? So we're gonna continue to do that. I'll upgrade this thing as time goes on, do a few more things to it, and go out there and beat on it even more. So I'd like to close out this video with a few words about this whole point scoring system, rating YouTubers' project cars. Now, of course, we're rating them ourselves, but the point here is that not all of us want these perfect cars. And it's great to really up your skill as you go along. That's something I always strive to do as well, especially with my level of fabrication and the complexity of my builds. I like to go more and more and more. And this truck was a great example. This is the first time I actually built headers from scratch. I thought that was really fun. I enjoyed that. But now it's time to take it even further with my next projects. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. What I don't really agree with is this idea of getting it to perfection as far as having the body gaps being perfectly done and stuff like that. I am not a restoration shop, and my particular aesthetic of automotive enjoyment has nothing to do with that. I really don't care. I want it to look like a vehicle, and I want it to look not like total garbage, but at the same time, I'm not obsessed about those small things that other people are. And that's the whole point behind the automotive world, right? We each have our own little niche that we really enjoy and like to dig into. I'm not as big of a fan of these fully complete cars that are done absolutely perfectly, because I'm just thinking, what do you do with that car? What do you now try to figure out how to enjoy that thing. Basically, the only option at that point is to take it to some shows and get some trophies for it because it's so well done. And to me, there's no point to that. I don't enjoy that aspect of it. So for me, I'm gonna keep building cars the way I love to keep building cars. And if they come in around that scale between the 50 and 75%, hey, that's perfect. I absolutely love it. Should be really fun to drive. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Reignited. We'll catch you next time.